Hey, everybody, welcome back to Random Reflections with Rick Rubel. I jumped right in off of that.
That was good.
Yeah, there you
Random
go.
Reflections.
Yeah, I was really worried I was going to rah all over the place. So I just had
This
to
is
get it out.
this is like Random Reflections number 2.
Number 2. Yeah, we had the last one. We'll keep them on rolling here. I'm excited about this particular one and requested to be the guy who got to chat with you about it.
So you're not going to be the permanent host of this.
We'll see. I mean, that's kind of up to you.
Yeah, that's true.
This is your shindig,
I
right?
like you asking the questions.
Do you? Thanks,
Yeah,
man. All right, feels good.
It's like, oh, what does Jake want to know as he steps into this role?
Want to know, or what does Jake just not know?
What do I want to make sure that Jake knows?
Yeah, right.
You know this one though.
I do, because we've done this one so many times as a staff, personal levels, all sorts of things. This is a fantastic tool, and we haven't said what it is yet because I want to build some anticipation for all of the people listening and watching here. But Rick, what is the word for this incredible resource? And I want to talk about how you figured this out or got this as well.
This episode is called FIPA.
FIPA. Yeah. Now, some people are going, what in the world is a FIPA?
You know, there was this TV show in the 60s with Buzz and Sandy. Yeah. They call him FIPA. No, it's not that. Yeah. FIPA is...
Who had flipper jokes on their bingo card for the podcast?
That's right. FIPA is all about when you are faced with a very difficult decision, not an easy one. I mean, you could use it on an easy one, but it's a little bit of overkill. But when you have one of those decisions that it's like, man, I don't know how to make sense of all these things that are going on in my mind. And it's a process that you can use to help take all of that information and get it down to really what the core issues are before you take action. Because most of the time when we're in a process of facing a hard decision, what typically happens is we say, this is what I'm going to do, and then we justify it backwards.
Right.
We say, okay, I've got this choice of this job. I'm going to take this job. Why am I taking this job? Oh, because it's more money, because it's a move to this place. It's a way to get away. It's whatever it is. And we justify backwards what our action is. And this process, actually, action is the last step in the process, because it really is to help distill all of the factors and say, okay, what's most important in this? And it's a lot more exhaustive process than simply a pro-con list, because we all know how to manipulate a pro-con list. Oh, I've got 22 pros and only 4 cons, so it has to be a pro.
Yeah, absolutely. I like what you said there, because I think a lot of times when we make decisions, there is the ready, shoot, aim mentality.
Yeah.
Because I think our mindset goes to the place of what will other people say or think? And so we go to a justification mindset like you're talking about, as opposed to a strategic mindset of figuring out what's the right thing, as opposed to the mindset that says, okay, but what are my friends going to say? What is my family member going to say? What is other people going to think? Or what's the public perception, or whatever it else is? And if we can get past that mindset into a strategic mindset, man, I think we avoid a lot of pain and a lot of heartache. And I think FIPA does that. Now, before we get into what FIPA actually is, it's an acronym. Yeah. There you go. We'll give you a little teaser there. How did this come about? Because I hadn't heard of this ever before. Yeah. This is something that I feel like is a Rick Rubel special. All right. And it's been super helpful for me. And a lot of times when I'm counseling people, and I can hear like the noise mindset as you're talking about, like, I can't make a decision because it feels like so much noise going on, all the things in my head.
So many competing thoughts.
Yeah. Like, how do I figure that out? How did this come about? How did you shape this? Where was this birth? Just give a little background.
So when I was on staff at the church in Virginia, one of the guys who was on staff, good friend named Todd Wilson, who came to step into ministry out of naval reactors. So he was a nuclear...
Like most people get into
ministry. His path was a little bit different. Really, really smart guy. And his role with naval reactors, ultimately he was in charge of a shipyard, one of the 7 shipyards that work on nuclear subs. And when he came on staff, when he left naval reactors and came on staff at New Life Christian Church where we were, and we sorted through things, Todd and Brett Andrews, who was the lead pastor there, and myself were kind of the executive team for the church. And when we would face hard decisions, he said, well, this is a process that we kind of used with naval reactors to try and sort through difficult decisions, because they had decisions that sometimes involved millions or billions of dollars, timeframes that might last a couple of years, all that kind of thing. And sometimes just very difficult things for them to deal with, to say, okay, how do we deal with this problem that happens when you repair or fit a nuclear sub, whatever. So we took this process, applied it to some church things, and I loved the process. Way back then, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, 20 years ago, let's say.
Feels better to say 20 than 20.
Yeah. 20 years ago. At that point in time, I thought, this stuff is gold. I need to write a book about this. Yeah. But it wasn't my idea. It was Todd's idea. But Todd wouldn't do anything with it. And so over the last 20 years, I've just used it over and over and over again. But a couple of situations that came up over the years that just, we put this into action while we were on staff at New Life. We had a couple of interns that at New Life we met in a school. So we did set up and tear down every week. We got there at 6:30 in the morning, started to set up to be ready to do 2 services in the school, then tore down afterwards. And we got there at 6:30 one Sunday. These interns were like bleary-eyed. And I said, what'd you guys do? He said, doesn't matter. I said, no, what'd you guys do? And they said, well, we decided that we wanted to see the Atlantic Ocean. I said, when'd you decide that? They said, about 10 or 11 o'clock last night. And I said, so what'd you do? They said, well, we drove to the ocean 3.5 hours away because we knew we would be back on time.
Yeah.
And then they played in the water for a few minutes, drove back, and we're there at 6:30 to help set up. Yeah. So my blood was starting to boil,
right?
Because it's like, okay, so much of what we do is really focused on Sunday morning, and how do we deal with this particular thing? Yeah. How do you make sense of is what they did a bad thing or a good thing? Right. Are there some penalties? There's some punitive stuff that happened with that. So that was one of the things that we did FIPA on. Later, when I was at,
did they remain interns? Just out of curiosity. Okay, all right.
I mean, it would have been really easy action and then justify it to just simply say, you know what, pack your stuff up. You're going back home. You're going back to Missouri or Kansas, which is where they were from. And FIPA really helped us process that much more appropriately. And there were some other ones in the future that just were really significant in terms of using this process to really help bring clarity to say, okay, what were the core issues that were involved in this?
Yeah, so you've given some ministry examples here. So is FIPA just like good for churches or
no.
nuclear reactor programs, or how does this apply?
So I would say I have used it with families. I've used it with in making decisions. I've used it with individual people making decisions about what kind of job to pursue or whether to take a job.
Yeah.
I've used it with people who were contemplating divorce. I've used it with somebody who alcoholic and whether or not to go into treatment, whether to do a treatment center, residential treatment kind of a deal. I've used it for lots of business applications where people are trying to sort through, do we do this or do we do that? Because the decision is going to put them on completely different trajectories.
Now, it sounds like...
one other thing. Yeah. We used it extensive. I sat down with my sisters last summer, and we used this process to determine the future of what's going to happen with our family cottage, because 4 of us own the cottage together. And when we die, when our generation dies, with the way that it's set up, all of our kids get our share. So my kids would get 1/6 of 1/4.
Yeah.
My oldest sisters would get 1/4 of 1/4. My other sister would get 1/5 of 1/4. Yeah. And my other sister her kids would get 1/2 of 1/4.
Yeah. So Mike has got a 3-foot radius of a cottage
That's
coming
right.
his way.
So we went through the whole FIPA process to say, what do we do with that? Because we don't want to burden our kids with how do you make decisions, with 18 grandkids. It's just so messy. And it actually provided incredible clarity for what we should do with the cottage.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. And I think it's important to point out there from just listening to you, those are situations where both an individual has done a FIPA.
Yeah.
A husband and wife has done a
Yeah.
FIPA. Teams have done a FIPA. Like, this isn't something that is only segmented to like one person or groups of people, but can go across multiple numbers.
Right. You know what? I'm just thinking at this point, this podcast might be more than 30 minutes, or it might be a part 1 and a part 2.
Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. So let's get into it a little bit more then.
Yep.
FIPA, FIPA.
Mm-hmm.
What does it stand for?
So when you face a dilemma, when you face a situation that you've got to try and figure out what to do, that's the action step. So that's the A at the end. That is what's the action plan that comes out of this. F stands for facts. I stands for intuition. P stands for principles.
Okay.
And the way that the process starts is that you try and write out a problem statement. So your problem statement may be, do I want to pursue a new job? So everything relates to that particular problem statement. Do I want to? We've got an issue. I did this with some friends. We've got an issue that our adult child lives with us. What do we do with that? So that's the problem statement. So then what you do is have 3 columns. It's easier for me on a whiteboard than a piece of paper because you end up not knowing kind of where things are going to fit. But then you list out all of the facts that are true about that particular situation. So if it's a job opportunity, you might say, it is a fact that this is what I'm making right now. It's a fact that I'm not quite vested in my retirement. It's a fact that my work hours are this. It's a fact that my commute is this much time. All of these things. It's a fact that these are my responsibilities. It's a fact that my boss has just been put into their position, and they're probably going to be there. It's a fact that they were just put in their position.
Yeah.
So you write down all the facts that may relate to that particular issue that you have. The I piece is intuition, and so your intuition is what your gut tells you. So it's like it's an intuition that my boss is going to be in this position probably for the next 10 years.
Sure.
That's not a fact because they could be gone in 2 months.
Right.
But that's your intuition. Your intuition is that this job opportunity that's there, I could make a lot more money. You don't know that for sure.
Sure.
It may be that back in the facts that they have offered X amount of money as your base salary, and it's a fact that they've promised that you're going to have all these benefits.
Right.
Your intuition is, it sounds too good to be true.
Sure.
Your intuition is all of the things that you think might happen, but you don't know for sure. They're not verifiable from any outside source. And sometimes that might be, my intuition is, if I take this job, I'm going to have to travel a lot. I'm going to have to travel more even than they tell me. My intuition is that I'm going to end up working 70 hours a week to do this position. I don't know that for sure, but that's my intuition.
Or it could be a positive thing. Intuition tells me I'm going to have more growth opportunities here, or I will have more free time with my family here, or whatever. Like those could all be things you don't know. Correct. But you get a gut feeling towards.
And then the P piece are principles. So they may be values, they may be biblical principles. Like a principle would be, my family comes before my job.
Yeah.
That's a principle.
Yeah.
A principle might be, I don't want my life to be measured by my job.
Yeah.
A principle might be,
I want to live in a particular climate
yes.
or region or something like that.
So it could be a value-based thing, a biblical principle. Again, principles that apply to that particular situation, and every situation that you do FIPA for is going to be different.
Yeah.
Now it's important to say that with that FIPA, with the facts, with the intuition and the principles, you're throwing everything up onto those 3 columns that's in your mind. And one of the best things that happens out of it, I did this again with friends a few months ago, and one of the things that they said was so interesting was, you know what, it helps to just put everything down where I can see it all.
Yeah.
And you can put down things that conflict with each other. Like you could, this is not to try and fill up any particular column. It is one of your intuitions may be in direct conflict with one of the facts.
Right.
And that's okay. Because you're just simply putting everything up there that's spinning through your head as it relates to this particular decision.
Let me ask this question then. If you and I are doing a FIPA together, how important is it that you and I agree on something that goes on the board or on the paper?
So if I'm doing that, this is probably the easiest way to describe it. If I'm doing it with a husband and wife, it's not important at all that they agree.
Okay.
They can put up directly.
We could have different principles.
Different principles. Yep. They what they say, what one person may say, may be in direct conflict with what the other person says in terms of the facts. Like, they can completely disagree, and that's okay because you're just trying to get everything up there.
It's not important to weed things out.
Nope.
The most important part at this phase is the FIMP is just to get the information down.
Yeah, and so for me, I've been doing this for 20 years. What typically happens for me, if I'm using FIPA for me, and I use it for hard decisions for me all the time, I will write down everything. I'll probably spend an hour and a half trying to get everything down that I can, and then I'll walk away from it. And then a half hour later, I'll have another thought. Oh, that's not up there. That's not up there. And one of the questions that I typically ask myself is, okay, what do I think my action is going to be? What do I think my decision is going to be? Why do I think that? And is that up on the board? Okay. So
that's it's driving.
Yeah. What I think where I'm going to end up.
Yeah.
So once you've got all the facts, all the intuition, all the principles written down, the next step is to take and circle or check or whatever to identify the 3 to 5 things that are the most important thing that you've written down. That's not 3 to 5 things in the facts area, in the intuition or the principles. It's 3 to 5 things total. So they could all be facts. They could all be principles. They could all be intuition.
You don't have to have one in each column.
No. It really is. What are the things that are the most important that are up there? And once you do that, once you identify what those 3 to 5 things are, that then begins to point you towards what your action step is.
Well, why only 3 to 5? Why not 10? Why not 2? Like, why that number?
Because three really gets you to the heart of the issue. Mm-hmm. It wades out all the other stuff, and because what you're trying to do is to be strategic in your decision for what are the things that matter most, and you can't have 10 things that matter most.
Well, can you have 3 and I have 3, or do we have to agree on it?
So if I'm doing it with a couple, it does get more complicated, because what I would typically say is, okay, to the husband, what are your let's just start with 3. What are your 3? Circle those in green, whatever. Mm-hmm. To the wife, what are your 3? Circle those in red. So they're all up there together. And then the conversation is to say, okay, talk about why those are your 3 things.
Yeah. Great
communication tool.
Yeah.
Talk about why those are your 3 things. And what typically happens is if I'm doing FIPA with somebody, what I always say is, you can do FIPA by yourself. It is really helpful to have somebody on the outside who can help walk you through that and ask questions to really clarify, is that really a fact? Is that really intuition? Is that really a principle?
Yeah.
To help make sure that they're there. But then if I'm helping facilitate that process, what I'm trying to do is to help them get to the place that they may agree on those three things. Now, they may not. And if they don't, that's telling, because that makes the action step have to include all six of those things that may be in conflict, and say, okay, if that's true, and you think this, and you think this, our action step has to bring some resolution to what those things are. So the action may not be the end result. It may be a step in the process to say, okay, because you think this and you think this, our next step is that we've got to figure out why.
I can see how that works really well in a marriage, because the communication piece of it. What about when teams, you're on a leadership team with 5 people or 10 people or however many, and you're trying to figure out, do we purchase this product? Do we go into this field? Do we do this event? Do we look for this market? Whatever that may be. And you've got maybe everyone's circling their own things, and then all of a sudden you look at the board and you've got 12 different things. How does that work different maybe with an organization in marriage?
I think in an organization, the leader ultimately has to establish what those things are based on values, but they've got to listen in the process as well. They've got to hear why each person thinks what they do. And if you really do end up with 12 separate things that can't be resolved, that's a leadership issue, because there's not a common vision and values that's driving where they need to go.
Sure.
So I think you have to ask the right questions to say, to help people get on board. And there are times I think that I've done this with the staff where I kind of have planted the flag and said, no, this value, this principle, it trumps everything else. I know that that's true. I know that's what you want. I know that's what we've done in the past, but this principle is the most important thing that's up here. Okay. And so you have to figure out where that falls.
Okay. Yeah. So then we've sat down as an organization, in your marriage, whatever it is that you're looking to figure out this thing. You've got your 3 to 5 things that you've circled now, and you've said, hey, whether they're more in facts, wherever it is on the board, you've got those in there. How do you then take these 3 to 5 things and make an action step? How do you know what the thing is? Because it sounds like, okay, we've weeded out the noise. We've kind of clarified what really matters here.
Yeah.
How do we move from understanding what matters to taking the actual action step?
Well, I think the biggest obstacle is to think that the action step has to be the definitive end result.
Okay.
And that's not the case. So let me go back to the cottage situation with my sisters. So what happened, I guess it would have been last spring, somewhere in there. I did a FIPA. I spent a couple of hours working through what I thought were all the facts, all the intuition, all the principles that related to our situation with the cottage. And I sent them out to my sisters and said, okay, I need you guys to come up with the stuff that I've not written down, so that we did that. Again, we've got facts, intuitions, and principles. And ultimately, when we did the 3 to 5 things, all 4 of us were consistent on those 3 things. The first was a fact. We're all getting old. And we all laughed about it, but that's the reality. We're getting old.
Yeah.
The second was
something has to be done.
Yeah, we've got it. There is a sense of urgency to our decision. The second one was in the principles, and it was a principle for all of us that we want our cottage to stay in the family and to be enjoyed by everyone as long as that is physically possible.
Yeah.
So future generations. And again, we've been going to Crystal Lake since before I was born. So 67 years, something like that. And so we have generations of history and memories that all 4 of us want to make sure that our kids, our grandkids, our great grandkids, if that's possible, to continue to enjoy that little spot on the lake. That was the second one. That was a principle. The third thing that we circled was, it was a principle for us that whatever is done is fair.
Yeah.
Which seems silly, but for us as a family, that's a value. Like our parents fed that into us. So we didn't want to come up with a situation where somebody's going to get rich off of it. We didn't want to have a situation where somebody was going to be angry by it. We wanted it to be fair for everybody.
Yeah.
And so ultimately, what that meant for us in our action step was to get a real estate person to come in and give us a value of the cottage. And then there were some steps that happened beyond that, but that was the next step that we needed to do, because going through that process said, okay, we want to do what's fair. We're getting old, so we've got to take some action, and we want it to be preserved. And the stuff that kind of fell beyond that was, one sister's ready to sell her share. Another sister is ready to give her share. Yeah. One of the other sisters and us are trying to figure out, okay, how do we preserve the cottage for future generations? Do we do that in partnership? Does the one sister buy out our part?
Yeah.
That's all down the road, but we couldn't do any of that until we had a real estate person evaluate the property and say, this is how much it's worth, because that then gave us the ability to say, okay, to buy out one sister, this is what it's going to take. If this person, if another sister gives her share, what's the value of that? How does that all fit? And so going through that process, it preserved all of our relationships because we all agreed on the same three things, which was really, really interesting. Because I said to everybody, okay, you get 3 to 5 things. I did them in different colors. Everybody did stuff. Everybody had lots of different kind of things, but everyone identified those 3 things.
Yeah.
So it was a cool thing.
How do you think that situation would have played out differently if you wouldn't have used FIPA? If you would have just come with 4 different thoughts, 4 different opinions, 4 different ways of filtering information, and all tried to arrive at a consensus of what needed to be done?
Well, the reason why we did FIPA is because probably for the last 2 or 3 years, I have kind of pitched ideas about what we needed to do, how we needed to approach stuff, and everybody was kind of like, yeah, I'm not sure I like that idea.
Yeah.
I have this idea. I just want everybody to get along. That's one sister. And so the FIPA process allowed us to have conversations, and because everyone could write down facts, intuition, and principles, everybody was able to put their input up there on the. I did it on flip chart kind of things. Everybody was able to get that up there, so everyone was heard, and in that process, I really kind of mined my other sisters to say, okay, what's not being said? What's not up here that impacts what we're going to do? And part of why we've got to make a decision is not just that we're getting old, but a year ago on the 4th of July, all of the 2 generations younger than me, so it would be like my grandkids, all came into the cottage and had a dance party, which was really, really cool. Just really fun to see everybody doing their thing. But the floor bounced as they danced.
Yeah.
The floor that's supposed to be strong and firm was literally moving probably 2 or 3 inches.
Oh, man.
And so something had to be done.
Yeah.
And at that point, it's like, okay, we've got to fix the floor. Yeah, but we have to have a bigger picture of than just simply fixing the floor. Right. That's only one piece of the puzzle. And what FIPA helped us do was see the big picture to say, okay, what's the path? Because now we're on a path where either the one sister and I will share it, or she may have the whole thing. And then we figure out how to do the repairs that we need to, because that becomes much easier to do with one person or two people in partnership rather than four people in partnership, especially somebody who wants out.
Yeah, for sure. They're putting money into something
Yeah.
that they don't really want to be a part of anymore. Yeah. So then let's do this real quick. Recap for me. FIPA, give me the napkin version here. We've talked through all this. Someone's listening to this. They like it. They're intrigued, but their head's a little spinning from all the information. You're writing it down on a napkin version, the 2-minute version.
Yeah, I would just say the starting place is to say what the issue is. What is it that's troubling you that you've got to figure out what you're going to do with. Then you write down all of the facts, all of the intuition, and all the principles that might apply to that problem. You try and make sure that they get in the right column. You ask good questions. You spend some time doing that. Write down as much as you can that's relevant to that particular issue. The next step that you do is to just circle the 3 to 5 things that are the most important thing that are in those 3 columns. And then based on those 3 things, 5 things that you've identified, then you figure out what your next action step is. And that puts you on a path to making a decision.
Nice. Okay. And then I think finally the most important thing here is, has Todd copyrighted this, or are you going to write a book?
I've got to have a conversation with Todd.
Send him this podcast. Come on, Todd, be a team player.
I don't think I have searched to find if this is in print. Yeah. This concept is in print anyplace, and it's not that I can. So don't anybody steal this idea, because it is one of the one of the projects in retirement that my friend Jake Howard has said that's got to be at the top of your priorities to write the FIPA book. It's
really for the purpose of, I want to be in the dedication. I want my name in print. That's really what it is. That's my secret ambition there.
Actually, the real reason that you want it is so that you can use it for the next 20 years at Northpointe. Right. Oh goodness. I will say this. I love doing FIPA. It's a great fit in terms of my giftedness. And so anybody who's really working through difficult things,
Ruble Consulting is for hire.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I'm happy to help you do that. One of the just quick story that I think is a really cool thing, and I'm going to look and make sure that it's okay that I share this story. Yes, it is. Sue McKay, who's now on staff, we did FIPA. She was in a position in her job that she was ready to make a change, and she was considering lots of different kinds of options. We did FIPA together one afternoon, and the bottom line, the takeaway for me out of that whole process, we wrote down everything, all the facts, all the intuition, all the principles, circled the stuff, and one of the 3 things that she circled was that she wanted her job to matter. She wanted her life to be significant. And once she circled that, then it just became real easy to say, okay, if that's the case, it's real clear. You want a job that's going to matter for eternity. You're not taking this job with this company that's it's going to pay you more, and your benefits are going to be. That's not what you want to do. What you've said is you want your life to count, and the work that you do to count. And the end result of that was that she came on staff at Northpointe.
So we have FIPA to thank for Sue.
Yeah.
And Sue has FIPA to blame for us.
That's right.
How that works.
That's right.
Good
stuff.
So, yeah. Good stuff. Anything, any other advice, anything you want to add on there, FIPA, before we wrap this up?
No. Again, no, I don't think so. Yeah.
I'll vouch for it. Really useful tool in a lot of counseling. I tease people all the time. I say, hey, Rick has taught this really cool tool I want to tell you about. You just have to promise me that you won't ever tell him that we're doing this together. And everybody laughs when I tell them, but they've all found it to be incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
I've used it. Ashley and I have used it. I do think it's a really cool thing. And once again, I'm going to publicly encourage you to write that book and put my name in the dedication, because I think it'll be really helpful for a lot of people. So
good.
Yeah. Good stuff, guys. We thank you guys for hanging out with us as we have
randomly reflect
through FIPA as well. So be sure to like, share this with your friends, talk about it with your spouse, send it to your boss, tell them you found the golden ticket that's going to help in all your decision makings and get that promotion thanks to Rick and FIPA. And we will.
Well, hold on. I will say this. We always say with the podcast, like, share, subscribe, do all that stuff. I do think that this is one that you can share that for somebody who's trying to wrestle through a decision can be really helpful.
Yeah, I will be sending this to people for sure. So
yeah,
there you go. We appreciate it, guys, and we will catch you next time.